Hey guys, in today's video, I want to show you a few simple iPhone privacy and security settings that are worth checking. These are not going to be super complicated, and it's not about turning your iPhone into some extreme lockdown device. This is just a practical checkup for everyday users, especially if you mostly just use your iPhone the way it came out the box and have never really gone through the settings properly. I'll explain what each setting does, why it matters, and then I'll show you exactly where you can find it so you can follow along on your own iPhone. Let's start off with one of the most important areas, your Face ID and passcode settings. This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is open up the settings, then scroll down and tap Face ID and Passcode. This section controls a lot of your iPhone's core security settings, so it's a really good place to start. Let's start with your passcode. It's recommended to use a 6-digit passcode for better protection, but if you do use a 4-digit passcode, just make sure it's something not obvious like 1234 or 000 or your birth year. To change it, scroll down and tap Change Passcode. Enter your current passcode, then tap Passcode Options. If you want to switch to a 6-digit code, a stronger custom numeric code, or even a alphanumeric code, you can do that here. Okay, now if we go back to Face ID and Passcode, right at the top of the page, you will see the Use ID For section. For most people, you'll probably want to have all of these settings you can see here turned on to use Face ID. Then underneath that, you can also go through the other apps and choose which ones you want to protect with Face ID. So go through this list and turn on Face ID for any apps like banking, shopping apps, or anything with personal information. Now let's scroll down to the section called Attention. I like to have both of these turned on. Required attention for Face ID just means your iPhone will check that you are actually looking at the screen before it unlocks, which adds an extra layer of protection. If you have kids, this is handy too. If they grab your phone and hold it up to your face and try to unlock it, just look away and it won't open. And attention aware features helps your iPhone know when you're looking at it, which can be useful to prevent your phone screen dimming when you're reading something, and also lowers the volume for alerts. Since you're already looking at your phone, the alert doesn't need to be loud. Next, I like to have stolen device protection turned on. This is a really important one because it adds an extra layer of security if someone gets your phone and knows your passcode. If you tap into it, you will see options like away from familiar locations or always. For most people, always from familiar locations is a good starting point. If you want extra protection everywhere, especially when traveling, you can choose always. Now scroll down to allow access when locked. This section controls what someone can access from your lock screen without fully unlocking your iPhone. Having things like Control Center, Reply with Message, Wallet, and other shortcuts can be handy, but having some of these things turned on might give people access to things you don't want them to have if someone stole your phone. The main thing is to understand that everything turned on here can be accessed while your phone is still locked. So go through this list and turn off anything you don't want people to be able to get into. Okay, the last setting in this section is right down the bottom, which is Erase Data. This will erase your iPhone after 10 failed passcode attempts. This one can be useful for some people, but it is definitely one to be careful with. If you have kids who grab your phone and randomly tap the screen, I would probably leave this one off unless you're very confident with your backups. If you do turn this one on, just make sure your iPhone is backed up properly because your phone could end up being wiped. Okay, so that's it for the Face ID and passcode section. The next setting to check is Auto Lock. This controls how quickly your iPhone locks itself when you stop using it. It's a good one to check because if you put your phone down and walk away without pressing the lock button, someone could have full access to your phone if it stays unlocked for too long. To check this setting, go to Settings, then Display and Brightness, and then scroll down a little to Auto Lock. For most people, 30 seconds or 1 minute is a really good option. This gives you enough time if you put your phone down for a moment and want to pick it back up to keep using it, but it still locks quick enough if you forget and walk away. Alright, before we jump into the rest of the privacy settings, a quick thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Surfshark is a VPN, which is an app that helps keep your connection more private, especially on public Wi-Fi. So if I'm traveling and I'm at the airport or a hotel and I need to jump on the Wi-Fi to check something, or sometimes I like to do a bit of work on my iPad in a cafe And because my iPad doesn't have mobile data, I'll use the cafe's Wi-Fi instead. And that's when I'll turn on my Surfshark VPN. Before I browse the web or open emails, I make sure it's on because it encrypts my connection and makes it much harder for anyone else on the same Wi-Fi network to snoop on what I'm doing. And a VPN is not just for security either. It can also let you switch your virtual location so it can look like you're browsing from another country. That can be really handy for checking flights or deals because prices can vary depending on the region you're browsing from. One more thing I really like is you can use Surfshark on unlimited devices, so it can protect all your devices with one account. It runs quietly in the background and it just makes everything I do a lot safer. If you want to check out Surfshark, go to surfshark.com/SamCambeatus or use my code SamCambeatus at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. They also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to check them out. All right, now let's get back into the iPhone settings. Now let's jump into privacy and security because this is where a lot of important permissions live. So let's go to Settings, then Privacy and Security. The first thing we're looking at here is Location Services. This is where you can see which apps can access your location and how often they're allowed to access it. This is a really good one to check because a lot of apps ask for your location when you first install them, and most people just tap Allow and then move on. Tap into Location Services. At the top, you can also check Share My Location and make sure you're only sharing your location with people you actually want to share it with. This section is linked to the Find My app on your phone. Let's go back. And then down here, you can see a list of apps. If you tap one, you'll see the location access options for that app. The options you'll usually see are Never, Ask Next Time or When I Share, While Using the app, or Always. For most apps, while using the app is a really good option because the app still works when you need it, but it's not tracking your location all the time in the background. If an app doesn't really need your location at all, you can set it to Never. You'll also see a precise location switch for many apps. If this is on, the app can see your exact location. If you turn it off, the app only gets an approximate location instead, which is often perfectly fine for a lot of apps. A good example is something like a shopping app, food app, or Instagram. They probably don't need your exact location, so you could probably turn this off. But for apps like Maps or navigation apps, you'll probably want precise location turned on so directions work properly. So the goal here is to quickly go through and ask yourself, does this app really need my location? And if it does it need it all the time or just while I'm using it? Once you've checked that, go back to the main privacy and security screen. Right under Location Services, you'll see Tracking. Tap into Tracking. This is a setting that controls whether apps are allowed to ask to track you across other apps and websites. For most people, I'd recommend turning off Allow Apps to Request to Track. This won't stop every kind of tracking on the internet, but it does stop apps for asking for that cross-app tracking permission. After that, go back to the main privacy and security page. Next, we'll check app permissions like camera, microphone, photos, and contacts, because this one's another big one people often forget to review. Okay, so this is where you can see what your apps are allowed to access, like camera, microphone, photos, and contacts. A lot of people never check this after they first set up their phones, so it's worth doing a quick review. In this section, you'll see a list of permissions and how many apps are using each one. The main ones I'd recommend checking are contacts, photos, Bluetooth, camera, and microphone. Let's start with camera. Tap into camera and you'll see which apps currently have access to your camera. Go through the list and ask yourself, does this app actually need access to my camera? If it does, leave it on. If it doesn't, turn it off. Then go back and do the same thing for microphone. This one is really important too because a lot of apps ask for microphone access and you may not even realize they still have it. For example, some apps need it for voice messaging, video recording, or dictation, but plenty of apps don't need it at all. Next, let's check photos. Tap into photos, then tap on an app to see what level of access it has. For a lot of apps, limited access is the better option than full access. It lets you choose only the photos you want to share instead of giving the app access to your whole photo library. Now let's go back and check contacts. Some apps ask for full contact access when they only really need it for something small, like finding one person or sharing something once. If you see an app in there and you're not sure why it needs access to your contacts, it's probably a good idea to turn it off. You can also quickly check Bluetooth while you're here. Some apps use Bluetooth for accessories or smart devices, but if an app doesn't need it, you can turn it off too. You don't need to overthink this part. The goal is just to do a quick permissions cleanup and make sure apps only have access to what they actually need. Once you've gone through those, we'll check a few extra settings lower down in the same privacy and security menu. If we scroll right down to the bottom, we should see App Privacy Report. If you turn this on, it gives you a behind the scenes look at how apps are using permissions, like location, camera, microphone, and network activity. You don't need to sit there and analyze it all right now, but it's a handy tool to have turned on, because if you ever want to check what apps have been doing in the background, this is where you can look. So if yours is off, I'd recommend turning App Privacy Report on. And next, tap into Wired Accessories. This setting controls what happens when you plug your iPhone into accessories while your phone is locked. If you want more protection, especially if you use public chargers or shared spaces, choose Ask for New Accessories. So this will prompt you for your PIN to allow a new accessory to connect. That way your phone is not just automatically trusting whatever gets plugged into it while it's locked. So that was a simple privacy and security checkup you can do on your iPhone and even your iPad. If you want more helpful iPhone and iPad tips, you can check out these videos next. And just a quick thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. If you want to check them out, I'll leave a link in the description below. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.